Welcome to another episode of Overcome Out Loud with Charlie Smith, where we have real people that have faced real challenges and found real solutions in life. You know, I like to say we've suffered enough in silence. And today I am really beyond grateful and excited to have Rebecca and Rose Castro from the Castro Foundation on today. Some of the episodes I'll tell you to grab a pen and paper. Today I may tell you to grab a box of tissues. These are two remarkable women. They have celebrated the life of their son and brother through selfless acts of kindness and creating the JC Foundation in memory of their son and brother Jeremy, who passed away from an overdose in 2017. This family's tragedy has been turned into, as I said, selfless acts of kindness. Castro Foundation is dedicated to helping people find recovery. They fund people going to sober livings. They provide tons of resources for young men and women in our community. And to see a foundation that's been started in the memory of such a loving young man who was taken from us too soon, and to have the courage to come share your story with us. We've had so many people that have overcome addiction, but to have the other side of that story and see what the families face, and then to see how you've turned this tragedy into something so good is remarkable. So I honor you both, and I'm really super grateful and want to welcome you on Overcome Out Loud. And I want to thank you for being here, both of you.
Well,
Thank
thanks
you
for having us.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, can you maybe share a little bit about the early years? I mean, you know, you guys obviously have such a close family, and tell us a little bit about what the early years were like for your family, and when, you know, you started to see Jeremy starting to have some issues.
Yeah. So we have grown up very close our whole lives. We, sit down to dinner every night. We've done everything all the experts say to do to strengthen your family. We go to church, not regularly, but we go to church together. We celebrate all the holidays, honor God. We're Christians. And Jeremy had a great life. And, he was an exceptional soccer player.
Right.
And from the age of 4, when he was old enough to sign up for his first ASO, he fell in love with his coach, Lonnie Mercer, rest his soul. And from there, that was just it. Soccer was his life. He started playing competitively in high school for Real SoCal.
Oh, so he was
for AB. Yeah. And excelled, went on to win 3 national championships, from the time he was 15, 16, 17. Got a scholarship to college to play, made varsity team as a freshman. And he came home for summer. He was never a great student. And he came home, he flunked out of one class, and he was not eligible to play his sophomore year. So I just said, Jeremy, you got to get yourself, go to summer school. You'll drive every day, whatever, 2 days a week, whatever it takes, do it. And he wanted to do it, but instead he went to a party that summer, and another Newberry Park person, introduced him to heroin and just basically said, do you want to try something that'll make you feel the best you've ever felt in your life? And he said yes, out of curiosity. He was a little down because of his situation, and his life turned on a dime that night.
Wow. And what a warning, because I think, as we look at statistics and we look at addiction, we know that between 75 and 80% of people that suffer from substance abuse disorders and addiction have suffered some form of childhood trauma. But there's this other percentage that, really needs a voice, which is what you guys are talking about, which is, there was really nothing in the family history that would indicate that Jeremy was going to have any problems. He lived a comfortable life. He excelled at sports. And you find that moment, I always say, that substance abuse at its core is a chemical solution to an emotional problem. And in that moment of pain, and, opiates and heroin as an extension of, I know they treat emotional pain much greater than they treat physical pain. And so, the warning here is, it may not start as experimental. It may not start as a slow, you may have all of the things in your life going for you, but all of a sudden you reach for a chemical solution to an emotional problem. And if that becomes your go-to, it's on. And it sounds like that's what you experienced with Jeremy. His life literally, as you said, turned on a dime.
It literally did. And, we don't have addiction in our family.
Right.
And I humbled myself through the years when he was using. And I said, Jeremy, please, if there's anything I have done or not done to make you want to turn to using, tell me. I'll beg your forgiveness. I won't get angry. I won't lash out. Tell me if there's anything I have done. And he said, no, Mom, I've had a great childhood. I was a little down over a girlfriend. He had a major breakup in high school, and he never really recovered from it. But the fact that it's handed right here, it's like if I put a dish of candy in front of you, and it looks great, you're gonna try it. And sometimes you're never going to be able to give up that candy again. So part of the problem is its availability, and then you smoke it and it's like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And I didn't die. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden your body just needs it. I cannot put my finger on one psychological problem he was having that he told me, and we were super close.
Right.
Super, super close. Things that a mom would never know about their child. And he was very open about it. And I don't know. To this day, I asked him, I don't understand what made it okay for you to turn your life over to something. Help me understand that, that you would just give your life over to something. And he just, I don't know. I just tried it and I liked it. And he said, the worst thing I ever did was start smoking weed.
Yeah.
And, I guess that's it, because it gives you some sort of courage. Because again, you don't die from it or jump off a building or anything. Things are all good. And it just frees you to go on to the next step. He played around the Xanny bars in high school, and, it just starts from there. And
Yeah. There's a healthy set of coping skills. I always tell people that, when you choose certain behaviors, you choose certain consequences, and people do things in pattern over time because they get a payoff from them. And, those can be unhealthy or healthy payoffs. And so, whether it's the breakup of a girlfriend or failing a test or something that makes us internally feel less than or feel like we can't deal with it, there's a healthy way that we could choose to deal with that. But if we have access to something that makes it go away fast, even though it's got negative consequences, and I think that's the cycle of addiction that you described so perfectly was, despite these negative consequences associated with engaging in that behavior. And I think for Jeremy, the worst consequence was the shame and the guilt associated with the fact that he was doing that, and that this had become a solution. But, it's hard for non-addicts or non-alcoholics to realize that how narrow the choice is once you've started, that you become addicted to the relief. It's not so much the substance, it's the relief the substance gives you. And if I can get relief, even though it's hurting me, I want the relief.
Right.
And I also think, too, it has a lot to do. My brother and I were very close, but we're very different. When I get stressed out or overwhelmed, I go and I talk to my mom or my friends, or I talk about it and I share things about it. That's how I deal with my emotions. He was never like that. And sometimes I think it's maybe a guy thing or, whatever, but he was never vulnerable like that. So to me, I just feel like he had all of those pent up emotions and he was overwhelmed and he was stressed. And instead of going and talking or sharing, he turned to that. He turned to the substance. So
tell me what it was like, first as a mother. I know that, you're not alone. And I know you're not alone in so many parents feeling the pain. I mean, all of us, I think one of the worst things that we could experience as parents is to see our children in pain.
Oh.
And we want to remove that pain at any cost. I mean, as you just so eloquently said, I mean, if there's anything literally in desperation that I've done that can reverse this for you, tell me, because I want to do that. I mean, I want to relieve that pain. How hard is that feeling of powerlessness that you feel when you just watch this cycle, Rose, happening in front of your eyes?
Oh, it is absolute, complete anxiety, desperation, feeling of failure. What did I do wrong? What didn't I do? It's just overwhelming. It consumes you, and every thought is about him and his addiction. And it's heartbreaking because I always say one of the hardest things to do for me, and I'm sure for any mother, is to watch your child self-loathe Jeremy loathed himself. And that alone broke my heart because I saw all the good things about him. You know, he was so kind. He was so sensitive. And for him to hate himself because of the fact that he couldn't stop. I mean, he physically couldn't stop. That's what opiates do to your brain. You know, you cannot stop. And for him to sit there and cry and apologize for what he put our family through is just, I wish I could take that away.
I know.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that, and then the flip side is this going to be the day? Is this going to be the day he doesn't wake up?
Because you know the risks he's taking by
Oh.
engaging in this behavior. And I think, the young induction into marijuana or any kind of escape, all of these escapes that we can get addicted to at a young age, they become our go-to. And it's, it literally is like playing Russian roulette, and you're watching your son leave every day with a loaded gun, knowing he's got it in his hand and not knowing what's going to happen. And it's tearing your family apart and tearing,
Yeah.
the sense of safety that you have apart. What if anything, can you share with other mothers or fathers or families that are going through this? What if anything was what you leaned on to help you get through this? And maybe Rebecca, if you could answer the same question. I mean, what helped you during this time?
Well, honestly, I prayed. I cried rivers of tears. I also went to an NA meeting, which relieved some of the stress. I didn't go regularly. I maybe should have, but you need to talk about it. And the problem with talking about it to your friends is it's horrifying to say that my son is addicted to heroin. People don't like the word heroin, but I think if you can go outside and go to other support groups, NA or Al-Anon, whatever the AA meeting is for family, something like that, that is really, really helpful. And, for me, it was just pray. I prayed constantly that God would save him. And the ironic thing is God did save him, just not in the way I wanted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
And I think, and God bless you for sharing and having the strength to share, because, parents and mothers and fathers, the stigma associated with and the cave that you feel like you need to stay in is the one thing that's keeping the family sick. I mean, they say we're only as sick as our secrets, and there is no shame or guilt. It's only an illusion of what we project. And so, the courage is really in what you're doing, and encouraging more parents to talk about it so that we can find solutions to that is so powerful. And Rebecca, what was it like feeling so powerless over your brother's disease and knowing how close you guys were? Knowing that he was, involved in this must have been very hard for you.
Yeah, it was very hard. It was, every day felt like it was never going to end. And that was years and years of him using. I think exactly like you just said, it was so hard for me I was embarrassed. I'm not going to lie. I was embarrassed. And for a long time, it was really hard for me to even share it with some of my closest friends because, like my mom said, it's like the worst. Even now, we are still trying to end the stigma of heroin and all the opioids and drugs that are out there because some people aren't comfortable talking about it. So for me, even years ago, having that stigma associated with it and having no one in my life who I knew could relate to me was really hard. I didn't really go to support groups. I prayed. I talked to my mom. I have a younger brother who I also kind of leaned on a lot. But I think for a long time, I just kind of avoided it. I just didn't have a good outlet because I just felt like there's no one that can understand this. And also, I didn't want people to look down on me. I didn't want people to look down on my family because he was such a good person that just got caught in a really bad thing. So, and then going back to, the daily life, it's just to see my mom feel so bad about herself when she's such a good mom. And I know it had nothing to do with her. It was really hard too.
Yeah.
So After a while, after I realized how serious the problem was, it kind of didn't matter about what people thought about me or my family. I just started focusing on my focus shifted to wanting to help him. And so I started being more open about it and talking about it more. And even with him, sometimes, his attitude over the years started changing. I would walk in the room and say hi to him, and he would be agitated. He would be annoyed, just not himself. So dealing with that was really hard too. And then there would just be times where I would just start calling him out. And I would just say, I know that you're high, I know that you're doing this, which would make things worse. But I think I held it in for so long that it got to a point where I couldn't any longer. And, I did eventually open up to some of my close friends about it. And they were more than supportive. And I feel silly for not going to them sooner. But it's a situation that I was never in. It's a situation I would never want anyone else to have to be in. But I think between his passing and really overcoming Outloud, and the more people standing up and sharing their stories has just strengthened our story. But I'm not gonna lie, it was a daily struggle for years and years, and it was tough.
Yeah, I hate to hear, and I've felt it myself. I remember after I faced my addiction, my alcoholism, and people knew that I was in recovery. I remember the whispers, that I would see, and oh, there's Charlie, he realizes he's a drug addict. Right. But that's we don't say that about diabetics. We don't say that about people with heart disease. We don't say, oh, my father or my brother is struggling with diabetes or heart disease or some other condition, and people rally around them, and somehow addiction and substance abuse hasn't reached that level. And so I think and when many people come to me and say, what can I do? And what I hear from both of you is the most important thing you can do, because we don't know what we can do for the sufferer, but we know we have to take care of ourselves in order to be able to be, a resource for our family and to be able to sustain our own well-being, that we have to take care of ourselves. And so the things that you guys are sharing with people about being open about this and talking more about it is so courageous. And so, there was some hope, right? Jeremy ultimately, dealt with this, and you guys got him into treatment, and he found some periods of sobriety. That must have given you a whole lot of hope.
Yeah, it really did. And let me just say that when you first find out your child has an addiction like that, it's overwhelming. You literally do not know what to do. Literally, you don't. And it's heartbreaking, of course. Jeremy used to always say, Mom, don't worry, you can't OD on smoking heroin. And I'm like, is that a fact? Like, is that a medical fact? How do you know that? And he goes, I'll never go to the needle. Well, the first time I realized he went to the needle is when he overdosed, and I found him on the floor. And I looked up, and there was his rig, with a spoon and a lighter and a syringe full of, brown liquid. And there's moments in your life that are just so clear, and a mirror is held up, and that's when I realized he's sick. He needs so much help. He's broken. And that's what he used to tell me, Mom, I'm broken. And that's heartbreaking. I mean, basically everything surrounding this thing is heartbreaking. And he did agree to go to rehab once, and he came out, and he was clean for maybe 30 days, started using again. I found out.
He never did sober living, by the way.
He never did sober living, which was not big, or I didn't know that much about it. All I knew is it was like $3,000 a month, and there was a house in Thousand Oaks, and everybody says, oh, well, there's sneaking drugs in. None of the houses we deal with, by the way, that they were talking about. And he wouldn't go. And I'm like, well, by this time he's, in his 20s. I can't make him go. Right. I can kick him out. We've done that. He tried. He wanted to. He just couldn't beat it. He came back. You come back to the same environment. Your dealers know when you're out. They know when you're getting out. They're texting you right that day, that morning. Hey, you want to hook up? Hey, let's, you want to meet up? And boom, they're there. They're predators. They're at your doorstep. They deliver to your door. It's very hard for an addict to overcome that. And I see the most success is when people do go to sober living. And the sober living houses that I now know about are wonderful. I wish I would have known them when Jeremy was alive. I could have, I don't know, maybe forced him, maybe threatened him, you can't live here. I don't know what I would have done, but there was just that shred of hope that maybe he would still be here. But, you know, I think everything in life happens for a reason, but he desperately wanted to get clean. He hated himself for not being able to get clean, you know?
It's one of the things that I really encourage people in recovery to focus on is their own identity. You know, I think what we think about ourselves is so important. And, you know, in today's society, we've lived with the fear of missing out or FOMO. And I think now so many adolescents are facing FOPO, which is the fear of other people's opinions. And they've been trapped up in what other people think about them. And, you know, they don't spend enough time on their own identity. And, you know, no matter, you can pass the soccer player test and you can pass the son test and the brother test, but for some reason you can't pass the look in the mirror test. And, you know, that's what a lot of people that suffer from addiction and substance abuse face, is that self-loathing, and then they bracket and build on top of that with shame-based behavior of, you know, sticking a needle in their arm or smoking something to get that relief, and then the shame and the guilt, you know, contributes to the fact that they continue to do it. But what you said is so powerful, which is there is no roadmap. You know, you feel lost. It's not like you can open a set of instructions and say, oh, if your son is, you know, using a rig and overdosing on heroin, here's what you should do, Mom.
Right.
And so you feel very lost and you feel very desperate. And, you know, those times are, you know, and I think it's so powerful for you to at least be providing parents with some insight into what that must be like.
Yeah, and also another thing at that time is I had no one to turn to. None of my, you know, friends had the same issue. You know, my one girlfriend, oh, my nephew, you know, was a heroin addict, this and that. But, you know, there really are no resources. And now there's more and more resources for families to reach out, for the addicts themselves to reach out and get help. And that feeling of hopelessness, we want to get rid of. We want to show everybody that there is hope. Dare to believe that you can get well. Just dare to believe. And there's so many of us in this community now working on that and towards that. And we're growing, and people are coming forward. In fact, around the time Jeremy died, I had literally five families come to me and say, we're dealing with the same thing.
That's right.
And I thought, like, these are the perfect families.
No, of course.
You know, the good families.
Right.
They live in the great neighborhood. They drive the car. They're so involved with their kids. They go family vacation. They go to church together. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, because it comes in. If there's a crack in the door for it to get in, it's so saturated in our neighborhoods that it's coming in. So I think parents really need to have a hardcore talk with their kids and say, look, this is the reality. Literally, I think high school kids are probably 3 texts away from scoring heroin.
That's right. And I, you know, you described so tragically what I don't think a lot of people understand is the progressive nature of addiction. You know, it's like smoking pot to smoking heroin, but I'll never go to the need. I'll never do. And next thing you know, that line is crossed, and it's just a matter of time before the next line is crossed. And that's the progressive nature and the chemical dependency that reduces, you know, all of our natural neurotransmitters and all of our natural hormones that we usually get pleasure from, and replace those with, you know, drug consuming levels of hormones. And so we become dependent on the exact thing, and we need more and more of it. And people are like, why can't you just stop it? I mean, your body literally has become dependent, chemically dependent to survive on, you know, the drugs and the alcohol. And getting more of it, you know, is become, you know, I'm sure for you, it became Jeremy's existence, recovering from getting, and that cycle just continues progressively. And I'm so glad, you know, so when you see your son or daughter, you know, who just says, oh, it's just pot, you know, it's a warning sign, because there's something that they're not, especially, you know, between the ages of 11 and 25, when the brain's developing, that our kids are so susceptible to chemical dependency to change, you know, the very nature of their brains.
Right.
You know, and so it's that progressive nature is a problem. And the other thing you highlighted, which I can't emphasize enough, is Newbury Park, Thousand Oaks. This is not Mayberry. You know, it is real. there are children dying, across, I don't know if you know this, probably don't, across the hall here from the studio is another mother in Newbury Park whose son passed away at Thousand Oaks High School as a result of an overdose. I see her regularly every day. I mean, the pain is real. This is not Mayberry, and the access to and the availability to get is no different here than it is anywhere else, is it?
No, it's not. In fact, we joke that we live in Mayberry, or my kids grew up in Disneyland because it was so perfect. Our next door neighbor was their preschool teacher.
Right.
You see the teacher at the market. You see, everybody. It's such a small town, and people just don't realize. Jeremy was introduced to heroin in Newbury Park. He got addicted in Newbury Park, and he ultimately overdosed and died in Newbury Park. It is here. It's here. And I think parents need to open their eyes and not criticize, or condemn. They need to open their eyes and really see what their kids are up against.
That's right. Well
They're
said.
up against this.
And they're not prepared to deal with it. There's no one that's,
Who's prepared?
We don't,
Nobody.
And, I wish, it is one of my wishes and one of my hopes, and something I'll continue to fight for, is that we do provide more social emotional learning to children, that we do some self-esteem work with kids, especially in this day and age, to help them understand the things that they need to do to build up their own sense of self-esteem by the way they feel about themselves, and that there's healthy things to do to deal with, the emotional highs and lows as a young adult, and, that ultimately, a chemical solution to that leads down a path that they don't want. And I love that you talk about what a genuine, sensitive soul your son and brother was, because, we just hope that people can see that in themselves before they become dependent on something else to shine a dark light on them,
Yeah.
And so he finds a little sobriety. He gets out and starts using again. How fast did the ultimate end come, and tell us a little bit about what that must have been like, both of you.
Well, he got out of rehab for the third time on February 15th of 2017, and he remained clean until probably a week before he died. And I know this because he was acting strange, and I pee tested him. Of course, it came back clean, because there's a thing out there called fake pee, and you can get it any place that sells marijuana or paraphernalia. We have a smoke shop right down the street. That's where he used to buy it. And I mean, I hate to say the depths that I have gone to prove that it's fake pee, but if it educates other mothers, I will say that I have literally had to put my nose in it and sniff it. I never reduced myself to tasting it, but that would probably have been the next step. And he would go pee, and we'd watch him. I'd make my husband go in the bathroom. He would strip down, and he would still pass the pee test. I'm like, something's not right. And one time he forgot to flush, so there I am, and I go quietly and I scoop it out, and it tested positive for opiates. And this is right around Easter time in 2017, and I'm like, Jeremy, come on, what is this? And do you want to go back? You got to pick yourself up right now. Pick it up immediately. Don't slide down this path. And he said, Mom, I'm not going to do it anymore. Okay. And of course, from that moment on, there goes my worry. It all comes back.
It floods back.
All comes back.
But
and
to backtrack a little bit, the last time that he did, go to recovery and he came back, he was doing very well for months, because at that point he was on Vivitrol, right?
Yeah, Vivitrol.
The Vivitrol shot, which I guess is like a opioid blocker,
right,
essentially. So maybe for a month or 2 months he was on it, and he was doing really well. And it was kind of the first time for me that I thought, okay, now I actually feel hopeful. The past 2 times, he was maybe sober for a couple weeks before he started using again. But this time I think it's the hardest for me too, because I had so much hope with the last time when he got sober. And yeah, we celebrated Easter together, but then right after Easter, that's when he started acting weird, and then that's when all the drug testing and stuff happened. But he was on the shot, and a piece of the story that a lot of people don't know is that he went to the doctor to get his shot. He scheduled an appointment, he went to the doctor wasn't in. The doctor, I don't know what happened. Did he forget about the appointment? I don't know. But because of the medication it is, only a doctor can administer it. So, and I remember this happening. He came home from his appointment. He said, I couldn't get the shot. The doctor wasn't there. My mom was furious. She picks up the phone and she literally says, do you understand that this medication is the difference between life and death for my son? And then from that point, the next, a week happened, whatever it was, all the drug testing, this and that, and then he was gone. So I think that's the hardest part for me, is that I did have so much hope at the end, and things were positive, and he got hired as an EMT. He went through EMT training. He literally was supposed to start as an EMT the day before he passed away. So I kind of am suspicious that maybe he was nervous and maybe that's why he went to use, but it all happened in such a short time frame, from the time that he didn't get the shot to the time that he used to the time that he passed. It was really hard, and you can continue, but I just wanted to put that in there because the last time that's the thing that I question the most, is why. It's like he had such an uphill battle. He was finally at the top, and it was like, you're either going to go forward or go back. And he went back, and that was it. And that was the end, quite literally. So,
and I think what it is hard, and it's gut wrenching, and to hear you speak so candidly about it is so powerful, because I think what people don't understand is that, the lie that after some period of sobriety, that we can let our guard down as people in recovery. I mean, this is really, we get a daily reprieve. I mean, this fighting and overcoming addiction is, it's a set of behaviors, and, you can have months. I know people with years, decades of sobriety that will let down their guard and stop engaging in the behaviors that they've been engaging in to stay healthy and clean. And it's not long before there's an emotional setback. And you said it could have been as simple as just being nervous about performing at a new job, and he knew that I don't intend to die. I just intend to get some relief. And shame on us for not being so clear about the fact that instant relief, we don't know. It is a game of Russian roulette. There isn't always coming back. And you guys are going to speak to that, and how that ripped your guts out to know that, the last time was the last time, and it wasn't meant to be the last time. This was not meant to be, the day he didn't come back to us.
No, it wasn't. And Rebecca just, when she says I got on the phone and I was angry and this and that, if I could use one word to describe what it's like having a child addicted, the word is frantic. You live in a constant state of being frantic. And her telling that story just brought it all back to me. I was on the phone with the drug company, the doctor's office, voicemail, everybody. And I was frantic for him to get treated. And that really is how I felt throughout the whole time I knew about his addiction. It's just like something bad is going to happen in the next 30 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever, but it's coming.
Walking on eggshells literally every day.
Yes,
I remember
frightened.
I remember going to her house on random days and just, she's kind of grumpy. I'm like, what's wrong? Oh, well, I didn't sleep well. I heard Jeremy up late, standing outside his door to make sure that he was there was activity going on in his room, 2 or 3 in the morning, knocking on his door just to check that he's still breathing, going into his room, watching him sleep, making sure that he's actually alive. Like that's what it was. And it
shines a light on, I think, the addict's, false impression that, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just hurting myself. What's the matter with this? I'm not causing anybody else any disruption. And literally the life of an addict is like a tornado, right? It just runs through all of our lives, or all of your lives in a way that really is indescribable. I mean, it is a constant state of anxiety, worry, and fear that, you wouldn't wish on anybody.
Constant.
Yeah,
and I
constant.
would never wish it on anyone. Mm-mm.
The night before he died, he was to start his EMT job at a hospital that morning. And so the night before he was working with Ed, my husband, and he was just working long days. And Ed just said, get up and go to work every day. Get up and go to work every day, And he was, and they came home late that night, and he ran to the mall to get a pair of khakis because he needed them for his job the next day. He washed them. We dried them. I woke up at 5 that morning to make sure he put them in the dryer. And the funny thing is, I don't feel like I'm a helicopter mom, okay? These are the things I was forced to do for my own sanity.
Right.
So
just
I
trying to
woke
bring
up,
some
yes,
control into an uncontrolled situation.
Yes. And I don't describe myself as a helicopter mom when they were growing up. And suddenly I am for my adult child. And his pants were dry and he laid them out, smoothed them out. He was so neat. And on top of the dryer. And I thought, okay, well, I should probably go take him into him. But I didn't want to wake him because he had a 12-hour shift and he was due to leave about 8 o'clock to be there at 9 in the valley. He was, wanted to get there early, on time, blah, blah, blah. And so I went back to sleep and I woke up maybe about 7:45 after, and I didn't hear it. The house was dead silent. It was deafening silence. And I don't know if you understand what I mean, but it is so quiet you can hear your own, heartbeat throbbing in your ears. It was just silent. And my husband had class that day way down south and he had left early. Rebecca didn't live at home. My other son, Daniel, was in the Navy, and it was just Jeremy. And I got up and I was excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to see if he's all ready. I want to make sure he has breakfast. He's going to be gone. Do you want me to make you a lunch? Take his picture and his uniform. And I went to open the door. I'm like, Jer, and I knocked and there was no response. And I knocked louder and there was no response. And then I go to turn the knob. The door was locked, which was against house rules. He was never allowed to have his door locked. And he had to sleep with it open. And I just immediately felt like something in my gut. I'm like, where is he? Well, maybe he left early. So I ran to the front of the house and I looked out in the driveway and his car was still there. And I thought, oh my God. And I went back and I was pounding, and then I ran to the bathroom and I broke in. I picked his lock and I went in and he was slumped over his bed in his night clothes, in his, in his shorts and a tank top. And I'm like, Jeremy, what are you doing? You're not ready? Because this time was around 8 and I knew he wanted to leave by 8:15. And I'm like, Jeremy, what are you doing? And for a moment, I just thought, you have all these things going through your mind. And I thought, oh my God, are you playing like some sick joke on me and trying to be silly? And I went and I touched him and I pushed him awake, or trying. And he was so cold and stiff. And I started screaming. I said, Jeremy. And I kind of flipped him over and he was just so stiff and his eyes were closed and his face was blue. And I just knew. I thought, oh my God. It's the most horrifying feeling when you realize that. And at the moment, I just thought, this is it. There's no more hope. My hope had died. And I immediately ran to my room, got my phone, called 911. I was hysterical. And I was screaming as if the louder I screamed, he might wake up. And I got 911 on the phone and she said, I cannot understand what you're saying. And I slapped myself in the face. And I got a hold of myself and I gave my address. I said, my son, I think he overdosed. He's dead. I knew he was dead. And she goes, well, let's try, CPR. And I said, he's already dead. And she goes, try it anyway. And so I did. And the paramedics, he was dead. I knew it. And I don't know how the front door got opened. And next thing I know, the paramedics and the firemen were there. And then I heard Rebecca coming up the stairs before that. And I said, Rebecca, don't come in here. Don't come in here. And she came in anyway. And she came up the stairs and said, Mom, what's going on? What's wrong? And she came in and saw him and just started screaming and crying. And then the paramedics got there and came in and took over and had us leave the room and pronounced him dead. And, there's a house full of police and investigators and this and that. And we weren't allowed back in the room. And then they went an hour or so later, they went to roll him away. And I said, I want to see him before he goes.
Yeah.
And they resisted and they said, no, he doesn't look the same. And I said, I found him. I know what he looks like. And by that time, my husband had gotten home. He raced home. He was about an hour away. He got home. And I think my sister was there. I don't know. It was a blur. And they stopped him by the front door on the gurney. And they unzipped the body bag. Sorry.
No, this is real.
I saw him. And he was so beautiful. He was such a beautiful young man. I don't know how or what he did that. And so there was the three of us, my husband, Rebecca, and I, and we prayed over him. And I think the chaplain was there praying with us, and we just prayed over him. I blessed him. I said, I forgive you, Jeremy. And they zipped up the body bag, and they wheeled him out. And that's the last time I saw my son.
And the pain in this room is indescribable. The pain of a life lost and the true pain of addiction that's being faced as a result of this tragedy. And Rebecca, I see the tears in your eyes, and I see the loss in your heart, and to know that this fight had ended with Jeremy gone just had to be unbearable for you, especially having that glimmer of hope.
Right. Yeah. And it was so I think it actually was like Easter or something, and we had a really nice time, and we went to my best friend's house, and it was just, things were just so different because, Jeremy didn't ever really go out, and, as he got further into his addiction, he just kind of wanted to be alone and this and that. So he was doing really well. That was in his period of sobriety when he was on his Vivitrol, and it was such a big thing because he came to Easter with us, but he came with us to my friend's house, and it was so wonderful to have him there, and something that he wouldn't typically do. And it was just so wonderful. And I saw him, and then I think the next day I had dinner with the family, and then it was maybe 2 days later that this happened, or even a day later. And I have dogs, and I always take my dogs to my parents' house, and that was normally a day that I wasn't going to go there, but I swear I just had this feeling that's like, I'm going to go to my mom's house today for whatever reason. I was like, I'm going to go, I'll drop the dogs off and see my mom. And then he had overdoses before. And so, the paramedics and things have been to our house. And so I just remember feeling fine, driving up the hill. But as I was driving up the hill, I see a paramedic car, paramedic car, turn onto our street and like cut me off and go right in front of me. And the feeling that I had, I can't even explain it. Like, my heart sank, and I just started praying to God, like, please don't be going to my house. Like, please don't be going to my house. And I get up the hill, and they were parked in front of my house, and I had all my dogs, and I, just get in the driveway, and I throw open my car doors, like, and I go up to the front door, and the front door's already wide open, and that's, weird for our house because we always have the door shut and locked. And I just remember, as I walked in, I just remember hearing my mom counting, like, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I heard her say, come on, Jer, like, come on. And I just knew that he was gone. And I ran up the stairs, and my mom said, she said, don't come in here. And part of me kind of wishes that I hadn't. And part of me feels so guilty that my mom had to be the one to find him, because she always fought so hard for his life. But I went in and I saw him, and I freaked out. It was, I fell to the ground. I was crying. I didn't know what to do. And then from there, it was literally like a movie. All these like paramedics and cops rushing in and telling me, trying to take me outside and sit me down and ask me all these questions. And I'm just thinking, like, what is even happening right now? And then after talking to the cops, they wanted to do an investigation about it. And, they were trying to go after the drug dealer that sold him the heroin and all this stuff. And then after I talked to them and kind of gathered myself, I obviously started calling people. And I called my boyfriend at the time, who he was closest. He was in Westlake working. And then I called my dad. And I think the hardest thing I had to do was call my younger brother and tell him over the phone, because he was in Florida at the time. And I called him a few times before he even answered. And I was just frantic calling him. And then I had to tell him over the phone, and then he couldn't even come home for 3 days because he had to get all this, all these requests granted just to leave. And it was truly, it still is the worst day of my life. And like my mom said, we got to say goodbye to him. And I got to see him one last time. And it was the worst day of my life. And from there, things just really spiraled. And, everyone was so kind to us, and all the community, coming over to make sure we're okay. And I was sick to my stomach all day. I couldn't get out of bed. I was throwing up. It is the most surreal situation to be in. I mean, I just can't explain it. I literally have no words.
It's indescribable.
It's indescribable.
It sounds indescribable. I mean, it's a feeling that I don't think anybody could imagine, that level of loss, and that, especially given how hopeful you were, and it really just feel like, the carpet was ripped out from under your feet.
That's how I felt, exactly.
It didn't feel real.
Like we lost the war,
And so take a moment and remember that life lost, and what a great, wonderful young man Jeremy was, and what a incredible family he had around him, and reflect on the power of the disease of addiction, and the consequences that we don't see coming, and how tragic it is, and it's just not to be taken lightly. And I just have so much respect for both of you to come share your deep pain with us, because what comes next to me is remarkable, because I having suffered some loss as a result of the disease of alcoholism and addiction myself, and knowing what grief looks like myself, with a sibling, Rebecca, and having my sister gone 5 years ago, it is surreal, and it does numb you, and you often, there's so many directions that you could turn, and so tell me just a little bit about the range of emotions. I mean, I know you go through a range of emotions and grieving. Was there much anger or more sadness?
I was more sad. I think I've been numb for 2 years after his death. I mean, it was so traumatic to find him, I relive that scene every day, even still. in my mind and I try to block it out. It was hopelessness. It was kind of, I was so overwhelmed that I had tried everything I knew in my power and it still didn't work. So I was very overwhelmed and extremely depressing, of course, obviously. And, but the anger did come. And when it came, it just rose up and I knew I had to do something.
Yes.
Like, I am not going by the wayside. Like I said before, I will not go quietly. And something has to be done about this. And I knew at that time a thought popped in that no other mother should have to go through this, and it's so depressing. You have to work every day to climb out of that depression. And then it just dawned on me, I didn't want to come at it from like a law enforcement angle, because
When you say
it was
come at it, you mean addiction.
at doing something
Okay.
in response to the death.
Right.
I'm like, this is not sitting well with me. In that sense, I was angry.
Yeah.
And I knew I am not going to go by the wayside. I'm not going to go quietly. So I knew I had to do something in response and to help these other families as well. So I didn't want to do, like a law enforcement thing and get new laws on the books and blah, blah, blah. That didn't feel right, but it did feel right to help the addicts themselves, because Jeremy had shown me what it's like to be an addict. And I understood what it's like to be an addict. I saw his pain. I understand the hopelessness and the self-loathing and the depression and the hopelessness that comes with addiction. And I'm like, I wanted to extend an olive branch and say, come this way, we will help you. I don't know what, but we're going to help you. And, I always says, my mom raised us to believe that everything happens for a reason. And I know now that God didn't take my son just to be cruel to me and make me suffer. He took my son so that I could help others. And Jeremy taught me about addiction so I could understand the addict and, give them a ray of hope.
How important was it in your own recovery and your own ability to elevate yourself out of that grieving and depressing state to have a new purpose?
It was everything.
It was everything.
It was everything, from the, doing the paperwork to get a 501c3 to
Yeah.
occupying that to, getting our word out, to talking to people. And, our community was so amazing. I think by 9:00, everybody knew what had happened, and we had visitors immediately and, every day for 5 days. That got me through the first part, but yeah, knowing that I was determined to save at least one child from addiction, from dying from addiction, that was my life and that was my goal. So everything I had went into that, into forming and meeting people, and that was it.
And I'm so glad that we do these both audio and people can see this on video, because the change in your demeanor from the sadness and the grief into the hope of and the vibrancy of what it looks like to know that you're helping people recover is remarkable, Rose. It's remarkable.
Thank you.
And I just have so much respect for you as a person and a mother. And
Thanks.
Rebecca, to jump in and join this, I mean, the depth of your pain, and to join Mom and say, me too. I'm not. If she's going to be loud, I'm going to help.
Right.
Make that even louder.
Yeah, and for me, it definitely wasn't easy. I know people talk about like the stages of grief and all that stuff. For me, it's just been sadness. I know that, yes, I'm very passionate about helping others, and my whole point is that I never want anyone to like have to go through or feel what I have felt. I want to try and help everyone, but I don't think that I ever really did have any stages of anger, honestly. It's just been more sad. I mean, I had to pull myself out of depression. I was depressed for probably a year, I would say. But, you know, it's just like the pain of like getting up and getting out of bed. And I would go see, you know, like psychiatrists and therapists and stuff. And I remember having one person that I talked to say, I know you're really sad, but you have to realize that he was very selfish for what he did. And, you know, him as an addict, it affects everyone. And I think that kind of pissed me off more than anything, because I don't see it that way. We went through a lot and it was terrible and it affects everyone in your life, but I never got mad at him for it. And, you know, more than anything, it's just the sadness of not wanting to, feeling so bad and not wanting anyone else to feel that way is kind of my driving factor. And of course, I'm mad that there's drug dealers and people out there, but I don't really focus on that, and I don't focus on the negative feelings or, you know, the fact that everything that Jeremy did affected me or this or that. I just want to be helpful going forward. And I think probably the one situation I did have with anger was just with the drug dealer.
Right.
And, you know, my mom's forgiven him. I have not. I mean, I don't feel the need to, because I don't feel like it's, you know, holding me back or dragging me down. It's just more of a motivating factor to help others, really, is where it comes from.
And I talk to a lot of people that are in, you know, as a result of the kind of challenges they face. We do hit a situation, a situational depression, and how important was having purpose and cause for you to helping you kind of pull yourself up and get out of that situation, because you are such a vibrant young woman now. I mean, I see all the things you're doing, and your smile's wonderful and your eyes are open and bright. And how important was it for you to find purpose in Jeremy's passing?
It was really important, and I think that it was a combination of so many things. It was a combination of people coming to us and telling us, like, you know, sharing their story with us and that they're going through the same thing. Because I swear, we felt like no one could understand, and we felt judged. And, you know, and then Jeremy passed, and it was like people came forward and we had to do something. And we had our doubts, no doubt. You know, my mom was like, we have to do something. I want to start a foundation. I was totally on board, you know. And then the next week it's like, is anything going to come out of this? Are we really doing this? Why are we doing this? You know, it was hard to move forward. And it's been, I think our foundation has been around for 3 years now. I mean, she filed the paperwork months after, you know, started researching weeks after this happened. So we threw ourselves into that, and we still, you know, we're small but mighty, and we're still growing. But for me, it's bittersweet. It is sometimes very challenging to work so closely, you know, to Jeremy's death, and to be constantly reminded of it. But at the same time, like I said, if I can give someone hope, or if I can, you know, someone can get something out of my story, or if even an addict can, you know, relate and kind of see, wow, this really does affect everyone, then that's why I do it. I mean, by no means do I enjoy being sad. Do I enjoy crying? Do I enjoy reliving the worst day of my existence? But I ultimately do it for others. And so we had our ups and downs, and it was an emotional roller coaster, but now we're kind of, you know, solid, and we've got good support from the community, and so it's all uphill from here.
I tell you, I wouldn't bet against these two women with every dollar I have. They are on a mission, and so people understand. I want to really bring some perspective. So the JC Foundation, the Jeremy Castro Foundation, is committed to ending the stigma associated with addiction. It is committed to providing resources, real dollars associated with helping addicts find recovery. They support people in early recovery getting into sober living houses. They provide funds for them to be able to do that. I'm going to let you guys talk about how people can find you, but I want to put this in perspective, because you spend your lives now watching others recover. Hundreds of people that you've helped. Hundreds of people that were where Jeremy, and you've taken all of this pain and all of this loss and all of this grief and given away so freely of yourselves to other people who are recovering, and watching them recover, and knowing that while it wasn't Jeremy's fate and that Jeremy's not here anymore, that you see his life saved in every single person you're helping, and how selfless that is remarkable. Because I know, you know, we do have choices, right? We can either suffer in silence and we can become victims of our circumstances, or we can decide to take action and to get engaged in doing something that's positive for ourselves and others, and to watch both of your healing and to watch Jeremy's memory continue. I mean, in everything that is remembered about him, to see the pictures of him playing soccer. I mean, he's not a life gone, without purpose, and he remains living, I think, in everybody that I've seen that has come through, whether it's the Fellowship House or Oak Forest Recovery or the other houses that you're now working with. And while you might be small and mighty, if there's anything that comes out of this, I hope it'll bring awareness to your foundation, that we can all get behind what you're doing, because together I believe together we're better. And so tell us a little bit about the foundation, how people can get in touch with you, and how we can help you. When people are listening to this, we'll put up the links to the foundation. But tell us how people get in touch with you, what you're doing, and what kinds of things people can do to help you.
So our foundation name is JeremyCastroFoundation.org. It's got our story. It's got a lot of information. We've got merchandise. And it has resources, which we are constantly updating. We also have a podcast called $20, because that is the amount it took to take Jeremy's life. It was a $20 drug deal that killed him. And we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're not on Twitter, but we do that, and we go speaking different places. We speak for Oxnard, the probation department down there, although with COVID we're not. And so much of people knowing about us is word of mouth.
Yeah.
People see in the meetings, in the rooms, our gear, and what's that, and we've been referred by so many people in programs to say, just call this person, call these guys, see if they can help you out. And there is no more gratifying feeling to see an addict turn their life around. And that's the joy that we get from it, to see. And we know some of these people because they're in our neighborhood.
Right.
They used to use with Jeremy.
Right.
And to see them turn their life around is just like, oh my God, thank you, God, because our efforts are working. And even if we help one person at a time, 5 people at whatever it is, it's working. It's one more family that won't suffer the loss of their loved one. It's one more family that's going to have, everybody at their Thanksgiving table, everybody at their Christmas table, everyone at their birthday parties, and that's why we do it. So we've kind of come over the hump of just grieving and heartache, and now we're seeing people recover, and it's a beautiful thing.
Right.
It is.
And I think the biggest thing too with us is we're really just trying to hone in on our community. We know that when we started this, we know that we can't literally save every person in the whole entire world, but we're like, it's here in our town. It's, Newbury Park. I'm born and raised here, Thousand Oaks, Westlake. So we are trying to basically just cover, Ventura County or the Conejo Valley, starting right here in our small community where people think that, they're still turning the blind eye and schools are still turning the blind eye. Oh, we don't have that problem and this and that. So we are honing in and focusing in on our community, what's good to us, and then growing from there. Like she said, we are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we have a website, we started selling merchandise, and 100% of proceeds go to helping people. So we donate our time, which is nothing for us. We're happy to do it. But so all the proceeds go. So, we greatly welcome donations. Like I said, we have resources. We're working closely with other people and trying to build our resource base and basically just spread awareness and education. We work closely with the foundation Not One More, who is in Simi Valley, and the president, Pat Montoya, he invites us to speak. And so, we've gone and done talks at the high schools. And I think that's our next big thing is we would really love to break into, our local high schools and things after all this COVID stuff is over. And then additionally, we wanted to put together some sort of maybe parents group or something we were talking about, and maybe what signs to look for, or just some sort of support group. We want to starting we would like to start getting those up and going in our community as well. So we just want to be a resource, and we just want to be a service to people that might be in our shoes, where my mom was a few years ago, where you quite literally don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to start. That's kind of why we're here. And, financially helping other facilities. We don't have an actual facility. I think that's a big thing I want to let people know. We don't have a facility, but we fund the facilities and we fund people that might not be able to afford recovery. I think a lot of people don't understand that, recovery takes money and, the houses, they have to pay for food, they have to pay for the lifestyle. So it is something that a lot of people might not have access to. And we just want, donations, like I said, are always welcome. And we just want to be basically a resource to help others.
Well, I'll tell you, this is two of the most courageous women I could have imagined. I really, I can't really describe in words what it's been like to share this morning with you guys. And thank you on behalf of so many in the Conejo Valley and the Ventura County area. And really, your voices are very loud. And I hear you, and, we'll do everything that we can to be sure that everyone else can hear you. And just know that we'll continue to honor your mission. I do say that people have a choice. We can suffer in silence or we can overcome out loud. And you guys have sure shown me what it means to overcome adversity and turn the attention to the selfless involvement in other people's lives to help other people recover. So from us at Overcome Out Loud and from me personally, I just offer a lot of love and support to both you, Rebecca, and to you, Rose. And thank you guys for sharing this morning with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.